I'm Jenny Russell. Welcome to Her Health and Happiness right here on UK Health Radio, the world's leading talk health radio station. Available on podcasts on all platforms, Apple, Android. However you get your podcasts, we are available on podcast too. How you doing? So Her Health and Happiness is a show dedicated to all aspects of female intimate health and the whole person. And this week is no different. It is Mental Health Awareness Week. So we're going to talk a bit about mental health and the impact mental health will have on our intimate and overall health. It's been a bit of a come down since I came back from St. Lucia. I'm desperate for some real continued sunshine. I'm here at my mum's house looking after mum. I took her out in the wheelchair yesterday. It's the first time she's been out for an hour outside of the house. But we've got to get the settings right on that wheelchair to make sure she's comfortable. And that's because it's good for her mental health too, right? Dementia, no matter what's happening with my mum, she's still alive. We give God thanks for that each day. But now it's to try and get that vitamin D inside her and get her to move. So Raffaella, Johan, and your beautiful children, I know the grace of God is sufficient for all things. Give you thanks because you brought this together. You brought this umbrella together and you've given people, presenters like myself, an opportunity to share our thoughts, our wisdom, and to try and inspire change in our audience so that they are able to live life better. It's funny, when I was in the shower last week, it's like God talks to us in different ways. And I was in the shower last week and I'm like, people ask me what I do. And I said, I help women to build strong pelvic floor muscles so they can become confident, continent, and sexually satisfied, all whilst improving posture, performance, and body shape. That is what I do. But actually, when I listen to, I think of, the course I did last year with Matt Elwell from the ECA, the Elite Closing Academy. He said, all due respect, he'll ask me, why did you get into this area? Then all due respect, what's the real reason? And so that's what I do. I help women to do what I've just said. But actually, as God was saying, all due respect, what do you do? And what I actually do is actually transform lives and save relationships. And that might sound like a really bold statement, but it is. And I'll explain to you in a moment why I say that. And then as that came to me, it's like, Jenni Russell, transform, what do you do? Jenni Russell, transforming lives, saving relationships. And then I was watching, I've got a penchant or a proclivity for Criminal Minds. I used to watch that years and years ago, and I'm just kind of watching the seasons I stopped watching. And there was one where, it's always about some kind of murder or something. And they'd walked into this establishment that was there to help people that were homeless. And on the back wall was just that statement. And I was like, there we go. That's to finish off what I do. And literally, if you break that statement down from I help women build strong pelvic floor muscles so they can become confident, continent, and sexually satisfied, all whilst improving posture, performance, and body shape. I've had husbands come and say to me, thank you for giving me my wife back. I've known women who were thinking they were going to lose their relationship, salvage that relationship, and I've seen their lives transformed. So that's when I say transforming life, saving relationships. But actually, essentially, the essence of all that really is the statement I saw on that wall in that program that sealed everything. And it simply is helping others help themselves. So Jenni Russell, transforming lives, helping others help themselves. Building strong pelvic floor muscles to become confident, continent, and sexually satisfied, all whilst improving posture, performance, and body shape. So just helping you to live life better. But actually, I say all that to say this, that this is what UK Health Radio is really about. It's a series of presenters who have a passion for health and a healthier life or style of life people want to live. I like to change things around. We talk about nutrition. I'm a nutritional lifestyle coach. But actually, it's really about helping people recognize the style of life they want to live and working towards that, giving them the tools to work towards that. So we've been given an opportunity to share how you can work towards living the style of life that you want to have, and help yourself to do that in the form of many different shows. So I hope that, whereas you may listen to Her Health and Happiness, you may listen to Dr. Alka and listen to her show, or, Jamie Lee Grace. There's so many different shows to listen to. You have got such a choice on this platform. It is, it's crazy. It's crazy. Every aspect of health is covered on this platform. You cannot go anywhere else and get that level of coverage and be able to pull from it, what you need. Pete Alton, undefeated. There's so many. I should just get the list out. Next week I'm going to get the list out and I'm going to read out some shows because there's so many. But it's Mental Health Awareness Week. And we look at mental health and we think, it's become a buzzword. It's become a topic. But every single one of us has some kind of mental health. And I think what we need to remember first and foremost is it's not a swear word and it's not a negative label. But unfortunately, the way in which it's expressed and exploited, it's made to be like it's a negative label, but it's not. What you have to remember is mental, emotional health is what underpins every area of health, full stop. Every single thought you have lays captive to a emotional response. That mental thought creates an emotional response. That's why it's mental emotional. And it's whether or not, I was saying this to my clients the other day, we've just finished the last 60-day challenge. And so the testimonies are coming in now. It was really, really beautiful. Some of those ladies have gone on to sign up to work with me for the next 6 months, which just makes, I've already told you about the lady with polio. And now I'm going to be signing up the lady with multiple sclerosis. So I'm just in this, my heart is really happy because I'm able to help them help themselves, make different choices so that they can be in a better position. So the style of life they want, I asked them, what is the style of life you desire? And they have told me. So we are going to work on the tools that will take them to that place. So listen out for the continued testimonies. But I was saying to them that one of my closest friends, her daughter is about to give birth. And she really likes her house clean. And her daughter's at home at the moment and left the dishes in the sink. And she's told her a couple of times, why are these dishes in the sink? But I love the explanation. She just sat so calm and said, Mum, I understand. And I know sometimes I'm tired. I understand that you've told me, but you haven't got to tell me again as soon as you open the front door. I just feel that, because when you do that to me, I can feel my oxytocin draining from my body. I just love that statement. It's like I just feel my oxytocin draining from my body. And that's that happy hormone and the endorphins that let the body know things are safe. As a new mum to be, we definitely want her to know that the environment is safe. She needs to prepare to be able to breathe well so that her muscles can relax and expand, so that her labour and second stage delivery can be painfully painless, if that makes sense, in that she won't have to have any external tools to assist in the delivery of her baby. Now, when we think about resentment and anger, they are linked to past experiences. So they can create mental, emotional stresses within the body. That mental, emotional health is unhealthy for the body, to be so engrossed in resentment and anger. It actually destroys the person, the host, which is the person that is full of the mental, emotional sense of injustice. It actually destroys the host, and it shows up as so many different sicknesses and diseases. And when I led life group yesterday online, we have church fellowship groups, and I talked about forgiveness, and I talked about conflict inside of friendships. And one of the ladies that I've worked with before shared in that group about a colleague of hers at work who had a bad breakdown. And then she asked the lady, you have to forgive. And the lady it's like she saw a different person, like, this glaze over the eyes. And it's like, I will never forgive him. I lay awake at night and think about what he's done to me and how I'd like to get him back. So the statement was, I lie awake at night. Not he lies awake at night. She lies awake at night. And she said as she speaks, she watches this lady get sicker and sicker. She's told she's got diabetes and Crohn's and this and this and this. But she said she will never forgive, and she allows it to disrupt her sleep. And one of the fastest ways to get sick is to lack sleep. So can you imagine that this hurt is so strong that it actually is destroying this lady's ability to get a good night's sleep, to be able to rest and repair and rebuild and refresh. And she's getting sicker. She's not helping herself. But she cannot see she's not helping herself. So that's anger and resentment. It takes you backwards and keeps you back and keeps you stuck. She's stuck because she's focusing on what has happened and she cannot see what's happening and actually see how the two align together. And then, of course, we've got to remember that the news and the news outlets and media do not help our mental health when it comes to what's in the future. Anxiety is linked to what's in the future. And it's very hard because right now, even as I've come downstairs to record this show and my mum is upstairs, she's just got the TV on, they're talking about, obviously, the rising costs, people struggling to pay their bills. And it is a subject that completely affects us as females directly in our pelvic and reproductive health. And I'm going to explain that shortly. But anxiety focuses on what's to come. Resentment and anger focuses on what has come and passed. So when are we actually in what is present, what is now? We're a Christian country, we say, but we do not. We've taken the Bible out of the schools. But if you read the Bible and you go to Matthew 6 and you go to, I think it's verse 33 and 4, the last verses, right? It says, don't worry about tomorrow, because it says, look at, even before that, like sort of in the late 20s, 25, 26, look at the birds of the air, look at the lilies of the field, right? So the birds don't worry about what to eat. The lilies of the field are clothed. It says, how much more will God, who loves you, clothe you and feed you? He knows what we need and what we have need of, right? So we shouldn't be anxious for nothing. That's another scripture. But it says, seek first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and all these things will be added to you. So it says, like, to focus on today. Sufficient for today is its own troubles. Now, this might sound like blabble, and you might think, yeah, right, it's all right for you, it's easy. It's not all right for anybody, but it's about a choice. And it's not easy to be able to choose when you cannot see what is actually happening in and around you. But the difference is, when we try to help people to help themselves, we need to get them to see that looking backwards makes it hard. You cannot drive a car looking in the rearview mirror only. It will not work. You're going to have an accident. Something's going to go wrong. And then, if you keep looking forwards, you can't drive a car just looking straight ahead. You're going to have a problem, because you need to look left and right, and you need to look at what's around you. You need to be present on where you are. And one of those great things for that is, the next time you get into your car and you drive, if you do the same route, say to work every day, count the amount of traffic lights you go past before you get to where you're going. Or pick a particular shop you might pass, or look for something in particular. Because most of the time when we're driving, people say that all the time. It's like, you get to where you're going, you're thinking, wow, how did I get here? How did I get here? We don't really pay attention. And I say that because I used to have a client that came to me twice a week. But she never even... I got her to count the amount of traffic lights she has to go through once she got into the Great Cambridge. She had no recollection of anything. She literally drives with her eyes fixed in one spot, which means we miss so many things. Our peripheral vision is gone. We miss so much around us when we just fix our eyes on one thing in front. And in the here and now, many of us have got gifts and talents. We've got things that, we might think, I don't want to go and do a car boot sale or whatever else. But we've actually got things at our disposal that could help us to be able to get through a certain season. But what happens is, when we can't see it right now because we're so focused on what's ahead, there are people out there in the payday loans and stuff, they're out there waiting for us to catch us. So we borrow to deal with what's here, and then we don't have enough to pay back what we've now borrowed. By borrowing, we create another debt. And so it's like a vicious circle. I don't have all the answers, I really don't. But I do know that we're moving into summer. And so if we look at the foods that are available for summer, if we look at what's the best things to eat for summer, if we look at how we savings in summer, then at least, she says, that may help. But I think the allotment and the farmer's market has to be the way to go. And if all other else fails, I think you have to go to certain shops at certain times in the evening. My sister used to be an avid person who would go to Marks and Spencer's in the evening and just pick up the bits of food that are going to be out of date, that are coming next to nothing. Because that's, our choices are the choices are there, but we've got to do things differently. And also, we've also got to rise up against what we're being told we have to accept so that we're in a better position. But to start with, the thoughts that are in our head have to be different so that the emotion that they create and the hormone that's released will actually serve to help the body repair itself, as opposed to releasing emotions and hormones that actually help the body make itself worse. That's a really important point, is that every thought creates an emotional response, and that emotional response will create a hormonal response. And we need to make sure that the hormonal responses that we are creating are actually allowing us to build the body up and not tear the body down.
UK Health Radio, the station that makes you feel good. UK Health Radio, the station that makes you feel good.
I think one of the things that's really important, that I mentioned earlier on, that I'm struggling since I got back from St. Lucia, is to actually recognise that even in terms of our mental emotional well-being, our nutrition is key. It underpins that still. It really does underpin that. And vitamin D is vital for our mental health, right? Because it's essential for our physical health. So we need to understand that we need vitamin D for our physical well-being, but we need it for our mental emotional well-being as well. And this is what I think a lot of the times people don't realise, in terms of movement and movement ability, we need to be able to move. But we also need to understand that actually the sunshine, the sunshine just makes you feel good, right? People out in the sun, it makes you feel good. It's not just about getting a tan and darkening the skin, right? It is really, really important for us to recognise that vitamin D really affects our memory. It affects our ability to lay down good memories. it affects our mood, and it can create, and when the thing about it is that the Bible talks about faith, hope, and love, but the greatest of these is love. But a sense of hopelessness is one of the worst places you can find yourself. And hope keeps you going. Hope keeps you going. But when you feel like you are in this position of hopelessness, then it becomes quite hard. And then when you start to then feel like it's very hard to be motivated to do anything. So people say you've got a loss of interest in activities, but really it's that you've lost the motivation, right? And there's no excitement, nothing's getting you going. Or there's this whole thing about the anxiety, the fear of what's coming in the future, which affects you, which affects your sleep. Like I said, the fastest way to get sick is to lack sleep. But if you can't sleep, you get really irritable, and then you can start to have really negative thoughts. Now, we have some 60 to 80,000 thoughts a day, and 80% of those are negative. So it's really hard. But when you're out in the sunshine, when you have the opportunity to get that sun on your skin, you're not really a person that's looking at or thinking about things that don't work really well for you. Just an hour of sun a day can make a huge difference to your mental, emotional well-being. And this is why it's really, really important for us to understand that, being indoors, socially isolating yourself is hard. Now, what makes it hard in this double-edged sword is if you're a sufferer from hay fever and things like that. If you're suffering from hay fever, you don't want to be in grassed areas. But you do need to get outside. So how do you get to do that? What is the best way in which you can actually get out there and get that sunshine? If you're not getting outside regularly, then you need to take a really good supplement with vitamin D3 and K2. You need the two together. And that will help you to be in a better position so that you're not at such a high risk for the associated effects of a lack of vitamin D. Because depression, once you get yourself into that rut, sometimes you feel like you're trying to climb out of a well. There's no crevices in the wall, and someone's poured olive oil down that wall. So you're trying to find a way to grip on and draw yourself back up and out so that you can be able to be in a better position. And this is where it becomes quite hard, especially I've got a young teenager right now who I'm trying to stop him from falling into a big bout of depression. People that are morbidly obese will find it quite hard. My mum at the moment with her dementia and being bedbound, being kept inside the room, that can really create a lot of problems. And then people say they start to sleep their life away. But it's another form of depression. It's actually recognizing that depression comes in many different forms. And so we need to be able to get into a better position. But when a person is full of negative thoughts, it's not so easy for them to say that they're blessed and highly favoured or that they're fearfully and wonderfully made. They don't see those things. But we just see what is wrong. If we focus on watching the media and the news, it just exacerbates where we are. And if we watch films around crime and murder, it just pulls it down further. So, Tom and Jerry, it's probably a good thing to watch. Well, it's to find something different. And it's to be motivated to do something. But maybe it's about knowing that it could be your neighbour, could be a sibling, it could be your partner. Don't just think they're being, inverted commas, boring. Or you've got to find a way to encourage these people. And what you need to be able to do is to make sure they're getting the right nutrition into their bodies so that they're actually stimulating the right parts of the epicenter of their brain that lays down memories, that helps to control emotions, the amygdala and the hippocampus. And you need to look up what the hippocampus is and the amygdala, because that's where we make our decisions. That's where so the hippocampus is all about the memories, and the amygdala is about the emotion attached to the memory or the thought that's in your head. Those two parts of the brain really need to be healthy, hydrated. Now, many times when we are struggling, water is the last thing that we want. When water should be the first thing that we reach for, we need to understand why we need water. And the brain is 74.5% water. Even the fat cells are 20% water. The bones are 22% water. The skin, I think, is 86% or 83% water. The kidneys, the liver, they're all in their 80s in terms of percentage of water. So everything about our body is really primarily the blood, 70% water. I think it's 70%. So everything in the body is comprised of a high percentage. It's only the fat cells and bones that are 20% water. But everything else is literally 75% of the composition of your organs, your brain. They're all water. And when we look at depression, when we look at anxiety, we look at the hippocampus and its shrinkage. We look at the amygdala and its shrinkage. We look at dementia as parts of being shrinkage in the brain. But shrinkage happens when the water content goes down. Then the shrinkage happens. So we need to understand that water is actually our best friend. And then we also need to understand, especially as we move into warmer weather, that we need to make sure that, if we sweat a lot, if we're at that point where we're going through the menopause, we're losing salts. And salt is needed to keep the water content of the cells buoyant. Every cell has potassium inside it and salt around the outside. So that it's really needed at the cellular level, and that's where we get sick or get well. So the more you sweat, you need the salts in your water. But not all salts are created equal. So it's not about buying Saxa. Please avoid that at all costs. Bleached, fortified, processed rubbish. You need to get yourself some really good, and that's where you need to think about when you're looking at what you need to pay for. Then you need a really good organic sea salt, an unbleached, unrefined sea salt. That's what you need to find. You also need to know that the most contaminated fruits, non-organic, are apples and strawberries. So you really need to say, right, this is what I will pay a bit more for my apples or my strawberries. You need to know that. That's really important. And it's good when you can go strawberry picking in and just go out into the woods and blackberry and strawberry picking and berry picking, because those ones that just grow in the woods and in the forage have not been sprayed with pesticides. So we've got to think about where the stuff comes from, and this is the difference as well. But it's understanding that eggs are the most contaminated, so make sure you get those organic. And obviously, if you've got to worry about the cost of living and the cost of foods, and you're not able to buy those foods fresh or organic, then you need to think about being able to get them, being able to wash them well. You can use salt to wash them and rinse them off so that you're trying to decrease the amount of pesticides. Now, one of the things that's really interesting is the dry cleaners. Most clothes come and they're dry clean only. But actually, the fumes in dry clean clothes, and trust me, I dry clean a lot of my clothes because they say dry clean only, are very toxic. So what we're supposed to do, and it's very hard, it says we should dry clean our clothes in the summer. That means when you wear them in the winter, they're sitting funky for 5 months. But we should be able to leave them outside for up to 48 hours to allow the outgassing of the toxins from the dry cleaners to come out of our materials. Or we need to find eco-clean dry cleaners, ones that use non-toxic chemicals to dry clean our clothes. So it makes it hard because we've got, there's a great book you can get yourself by Dr. Jenni Goodman, and it's called Staying Alive in Toxic Times. It's understanding where you find yourself and what you need to do. Now, obviously, cholesterol is a hormone that's actually made in our body. 75% of the cholesterol in our body is actually produced in the liver. The liver is a major detoxifying organ. We need the synthesis, the sun, to synthesize that cholesterol from the liver to get the active form of vitamin D. So they work together. So the sunshine is really, really important. But if we cannot get it from natural sources, then we need to be able to get it from good sources of food, and we need to get it from good supplements. Otherwise, we're going to find ourselves in trouble. You know, sardines, great source. Brazil nuts, great source. So we've got to think about what it is we're eating. And this is why I'm saying that I no longer talk about food. Instead, I talk about nutrition. Because it's about what that plate that's in front of you, what is it giving you? And how is it going to help your mental, emotional well-being? How is it going to help your physical well-being? Because these are the things that are really important. And once we understand that, then we're in a much, much better position. It makes life a lot better. So for all of you guys who are struggling with your mental, emotional well-being, please know that there is help available and that there is light. If you can see the glimmer of light at the end of the tunnel, keep heading towards that light. You are fearfully and wonderfully made. You are blessed and highly favored. You may not feel like it, but you are. You really are. And you have an opportunity, because you're still alive, you have an opportunity to make a choice. And Bruce Lee says what we're not changing. The late Bruce Lee said what you're not changing, you're choosing. But a lot of times we don't realize that we're actually choosing that. We don't recognize that. And it is true. Many people hate change. But it's in the change that the beauty happens. Not all of it, because some change is forced upon us. It's not best for us. But we need to adjust. We have to adjust with the seasons. Every year we have winter, spring, summer, fall. We have it every year. And we adjust our clothing. We adjust our heating. We adjust our eating according to the seasons. We need to adjust our thinking according to the season we find ourselves in. Because whatever you're going through, I promise you, it's just for a season. And you can come out on the other side of that season in a better position. But try not to withdraw yourself. Try not to socially isolate. The pandemic made us do that. And that exacerbated mental health in a major way. Like I said, it's a plan. So you've got to think that they've got a plan. You too can have a plan so that you can come out better. The Bible says, count it all joy when the many trials come, knowing the testing of your faith will produce patience. Now that isn't easy, but patience builds our character. And let patience have its perfect work. Build your character so that you emerge complete, lacking nothing. Now, when you're going for a season and you're being attacked on all sides, that is not easy to do. It is definitely not easy to do. But it is possible. It may not be easy, but it's definitely worth it. Let's play another trail, and we're going to finish on looking at what happens to Gina when she's not being exercised intimately.
UK Health Radio, the station that makes you feel good. UK Health Radio, the station that makes you feel good.
So just a little note on mental health and how it impacts our pelvic floor. I think the most important thing to note is that the reproductive organs are in our sacral second chakra, and then the root chakra is the pelvis, and thus the pelvic floor. And that's what we call our that's your fight flight. That's your slave masters. That's the pelvis sitting on top of the legs. They're either going to stay and fight or turn and run. And that part of the body is associated with financial stress, which is what a lot of people are going through at the moment, and sex and relationships, as is the second chakra, sex and relationships. So the very area of the body, for us females, the root chakra, our Gina, our vibrantly appealing Gina, can become not so vibrantly appealing, because she's taken in all these hurts and disappointments. She's trying to work out where the next penny's going to come from. She's trying to work out what's happening in terms of her own intimacy and her own relationships. And she's trying to identify who she is. So all those emotions are locked in there, have the potential to create lots of issues for us in the area of our pelvic and overall health. So that makes life really hard, right? And then you couple that with a woman who, like myself, who is a wife in waiting, who is going for a season where she is not having intimacy because she's not aligned with anybody. And then you think to yourself, well, what can it do? What can it do, right? Well, it can do a lot of things because it's an organ, and that organ likes to be exercised. It's an organ lined with a bag of muscles, and muscles like to contract and relax and contract and relax. So there's not a lot of contracting and relaxing going on with elimination, but there's a lot of contracting going on in terms of support when it comes to posture, movement ability, and keeping us continent. But actually, it needs a different type of workout. And that workout is sex, right? So we have lower doses of estrogen as we go through the menopause. And as we have those changes related, because it's covered by underwear then covered by clothing, we don't realize what is actually happening within this organ to these muscles, to the linings of the walls. We're not recognizing that the membrane becomes thinner, right? That the muscles itself they start to shrink, they can tighten, they can get thinner, they can get injured. When it comes to going through, breaking up from a marriage, going through the menopause, starting a new relationship, and then trying to have penetrative sex, if that area has been left on its own and it's thinner and it's drier, then this sounds really rough, but it's not meant to scare anybody. But obviously that area, because the membrane is now thinner, it can tear and bleed. Now, if it starts to tear and bleed during intercourse, during sex, that's going to create another situation called vaginismus, where the tightening, where the brain just thinks, I'm being attacked here, I'm in danger. So it tightens and it won't allow the muscles to relax, which makes it even worse, because then that can make things much harder. So we have to understand that, estrogen is like our plumper. It's like it gives it its plumpness. But also the act of intercourse helps to keep the muscles responsive, helps them pliable, and also helps to keep them plump. Otherwise, you get to a point where you're going through that, and as a female, the longer we are without, then actually you start to look at yourself and think, where is my Gina disappearing to? It's like she's shrunk. She's like a little girl's Gina. That's because she's not being exercised. But we have to also understand that, the funny thing is that even in terms of immune support, it actually does help the body fight off illness. And so it actually helps people to be in a better position to fight against the colds and things that are coming up to us. So even a couple of times a week, it really makes a difference. And it helps because it helps when intercourse actually increases the immunoglobulin A. That's the antibody that plays an important role in our immune system. It actually helps to increase that. So there's many reasons. Now, listen, don't get me wrong, I'm a child of God, so I'm not advocating you jump on everything that moves and goes out there. But also, this is one of the biggest issues, and I had this conversation this week, that as a child of God, as a woman who follows the word of God, it is really, really quite hard when you've been sexually active, you become born again, and you want to align yourself with the word of God, but you have to understand the biomechanics of your body, especially when you get to and into your fabulous 50s or your sassy, sexy 60s or your serene 70s. It goes on. So what I'm saying is that there is this whole issue around sin and also around the mechanics of our bodies. Biblically, women were married from a very early age. very, very early age. We don't do that now. There are more women out there today single than ever before in our lifetime. And so there's this whole pull for those that are in the church to align themselves with the Word of God, but not have an understanding about their female intimate health and the impact it can have on their overall well-being and their future relationships as they move forwards and wait and hope for a husband. But also, it does help to relieve, when we're talking about mental health, it actually helps to relieve anxiety. It actually helps because it releases oxytocin. It releases the happy hormone, right? So it improves sleep. It allows us to sleep better. It allows men, men sleep well after they ejaculate. That's it. They're out for the count. But it improves our sleep quality as well. And it makes us feel good. It has a lot of things. But it helps with our pelvic and overall health. Now, like I said, it's not that you're jumping on everything that moves. Doesn't mean you're going out and doing crazy things. But it does help you in so many areas. Even we're looking at dementia increasing dramatically in many people. And I've asked for the statistics of, especially in the black and ethnic communities, of those with diabetes who've been taking long-term medication, my mum being one of those, who then go on to develop dementia, because many people recognise the long-term effects of diabetic medication creating this situation, and they recognise dementia as diabetes type 3. And again, like I said earlier on, it's about understanding the nutrition and how it affects the parts of the brain that lays down memories and attaches emotions to those memories. Because that's why we attach ourselves to certain foods and food groups, because we think they make us feel better. Because we do that to mask or to cope. But what's really great is that, there is research now, and it is in its early stage, but a lot of research that actually says that people that have regular intimacy and sex are better at recalling memories, and that helps the brain. But of course it helps the brain grow neurons, and that's the part of the brain I was talking about, the hippocampus, that can actually regrow neurons, like 700 a day. If you want a great book, it's called Depression by Ray Griffiths. Get that book. It's a fantastic book to read. But there are great reasons for why we should be looking at ensuring that my statement is be ready, be educated, that our Gina remains vibrantly appealing. I use vitamin E oil on Gina for the vaginal membrane. Vitamin E oil is really good for the vaginal membrane. Vitamin C is really good for the elasticity and urinary tract. It's really good for the elasticity and for contractions, as is potassium, as is calcium, as is magnesium. Magnesium relaxes muscles, calcium contracts muscles, potassium helps with the messages from the brain down to Gina. When I work with my clients, it's about sensory communication, that sensory motor system. Everything is driven by and led by what happens with the central nervous system, which is the messages to and from the brain to our skin and our limbs, which is the peripheral nervous system. So you can't help somebody help themselves if you don't get them to understand the neurological changes that happen and why it's important to understand nutrition, understand breath, understand hydration, understand sleep, understand thoughts. It all comes together. So when it comes to looking at a program that I provide for clients, it is about the whole person. So that's why I say there's 6 rewards: flatter abs, better shaped butt, better shaped thighs, improved posture, dry neck as always, great sex. Which one don't you want? Because you have to look at everything. You isolate and then you integrate. And that's how you get a person to be in a better position than where they find themselves today. It's not about helping someone help themselves to go back to where they were, but it's about helping them help themselves to go where they want to go, knowing that where they were before, there were certain things that they did that contributed to where they were. So if a person feels that they're being hard done by and they decide they want to drink lots of alcohol and no water, and you get them to drink water and cut down on the alcohol and they start to feel better, they've reverse engineered one thing straight away. So that's just giving you an idea of what you could do to help yourself if you're a person that is actually using alcohol as a stimulant to help you. You're overloading your liver, we know this, but then if you think about the cholesterol being produced in the liver, think about what it needs to do to actually synthesize and use a vitamin D for your mental health and your physical health. It can't do both at the same time. It's going to try and detoxify if it's overloaded. If you think about the skin being the biggest organ of detoxifier, so the skin, the lungs, the kidneys, the liver, when you start to get breakouts, that's the body trying to get rid of the toxins and stuff that are inside the body. It's trying to get rid of it. So we've got to recognize these things. But my time has run out. I've had a blast today. I'm really hoping that I get to do some interviews this week. I've just been so busy just looking after mum and getting back from holiday. But if you want to connect with me, the next challenge starts on the 1st of July. So I'm really looking forward to running the next challenge. The lady with multiple sclerosis, the style of life she wants is to put the crutches down and go back to where she was. That's what we're aiming for. Listen out for that. She's already inspired by the lady that I've worked with polio, and we've had 3 sessions so far. We haven't done one movement exercise. I've made a suggestion. She's changed the way in which she walks. Never been told that in 56 years. I've used a paper clip, and the angle at which you can move the leg and the knee has gone from 15 degrees to 90, and we haven't done a movement yet. And we've addressed nutrition, and her body shape has already changed, and the body's responding accordingly. So it works. At Pelvic Secrets, Twitter, Instagram, Jenni with an I, no E, Russell on Facebook and LinkedIn. Pelvic Secrets at iCloud.com. 0207 291 4499. If you're not getting through on that number, Pelvic Secrets at iCloud.com. Let me know. Until next week, in health and happiness, knowing that you're fearfully and wonderfully made.